Hi everyone, thanks so much for hanging out with me and geeking out with me on tarot and mysticism and the occult. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got into the Thoth Tarot really briefly, because that's actually going to prep you for the context of what we're talking about. So before we start, my name's Joe Monteleone. I am a modern mystical misfit, and I created something called the Tarot Mysticism Academy, where I teach people a lot about tarot's mystical philosophy in terms of how to use it for their own deeper levels of peace and personal development and the higher occult mysteries of the universe, all that jazz. That's what I'm into. I'm a sucker for the mysteries, total sucker for the mysteries. And so we'll geek a little bit about that. So I started tarot really young. I was like 10 years old or something. Really weird age to start tarot. I found tarot and I was like, this is what I came for. And it was really fun. And did it for a few years. And then sometime in my early 20s, what I soon discovered is that there was this whole esoteric side of tarot. Like, it wasn't just about divination or, insight or like messages. It was an expression of the universe and pure being. And, in some ways, the ontological anatomy of the occult mysteries. And I was so into that. And I literally said to the universe, I was like, this is what I came for. Yes, this is what I incarnated for. So that led me into studying many of tarot's connected disciplines, namely hermetic qabalah and astrology. And by extension, hermeticism, Neoplatonism, non-duality, and other forms of mysticism in different cultures. And I was so into this stuff. I was so into the esoteric and into the Golden Dawn and magic and stuff. And I was like, this is what I came for. Okay, so fast forward years later. I've had this background of deep study into all of this stuff and the Thoth deck as well. I was drawn to the Thoth deck because the Thoth deck, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck can be very esoteric, but it's implied. And the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck was not intended to be an esoteric tarot deck. It can be, I'm not saying it can't, but it was not intended to be that way. It was essentially built for the masses, right? And yes, Hermetica, Plato, this is a lot of this stuff, so much of the Western mysteries come down to Plato, which Plato, what did Plato really do? He kind of took Empedocles and earlier mystic philosophers and tried to put it into logic, but it does not work because it's mysticism. But yeah, it all descends from that kind of stuff. Okay, so I was talking about Rider-Waite-Smith versus Thoth Tarot. So Rider-Waite-Smith is not explicitly esoteric. It was built for the masses. Again, that's not a bad thing. But the Thoth Tarot was built explicitly esoteric, meaning it maintained a lot of the system that was developed by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which, if you don't know, they were a magical order of a lot of people with a lot of money and a lot of time on their hands that put together a magical system which influences so much of Western esotericism and tarot today. The artist of the Thoth deck was Lady Frida Harris, and the person who directed the creation of the deck was Aleister Crowley, dun dun dun, the Lord Voldemort of the occult revival. And I'm not going to go big into Crowley because there's so much stuff out there you could find. I'm going to focus more on the Thoth deck, but all I can say is you're not going to get Crowley cooties by studying the Thoth deck, and really there's no need for any fear because his dark energy is not in the deck. You can just let that go. It's not even a problem. Or make it a problem. It's up to you. But yeah, so Aleister Crowley he pissed off more than a couple occult societies by revealing their secrets. So he was not afraid to do that with the Thoth deck. So in the Thoth deck, he was very explicit in this book right here. If you read this book, you'll read it and you'll be like, what the hell is this guy talking about? What he's talking about is a synthesis of esoteric systems that he started with from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and developed on his own in his own magical practice and research and pioneering of the astral realms and beyond and Enochian magic and channeling books and all this fun stuff. So this was one of the last things Aleister Crowley wrote, was the Book of Thoth. And at the end of his life, he was like, screw it, I'm just going to give it all And he gave it all, you know? He gave it a lot. Lots of references in here to a lot of occult secrets, and there's many layers to this stuff. So the reason why I'm kind of going into this is I want you guys to know that the Thoth deck is not intended necessarily to be a tarot deck that you use merely for divination. And if you use it merely for divination, that's fine. It's totally cool. I use it for divination all the time, but that was not the original intention. The intention, one of the intentions of the creation of this deck was to create an updated tarot system with all of Aleister Crowley's findings as a magician, as an occult researcher, as a crazy person, whatever you think, but also as a deck to really put the mysteries on blast in a way. And so when I was studying this deck and I discovered, I was like, I found this deck when I was really young, but I wasn't ready for it. It took me years to be able to be like, okay, now I'm ready for this. And I literally remember the day I looked over, I was laying in bed. I have a lot of mystical experiences when I'm in bed. I'll get to them later. But I looked over, I was laying in bed. I look over to the deck and I'm like, the deck that I got when I was like 10 years old. And I thought, it's time. It's time. And by that point, I had studied astrology, I had studied qabalah, I had studied some healing work, I had studied magick, a little bit, not a lot. But I had a background. I had like a background of the kind of Western esoteric structure. And so I was like, yeah, it's time. And I cracked open this bad boy, and the rest was history. What I found was not a tarot deck that's gonna make you feel good, and not a tarot deck that's gonna predict the future, and not a tarot deck that's gonna tell you what your ex is thinking about you, but a pictorial expression of pure existence. Pure existence. And the highest expression I have found of love. Yes, the highest expression of love. And you might say, how could you say that? Aleister Crowley made that deck, and he was the wickedest man in the world, and he was a devil worshiper, and he drank cat's blood and killed a cat and did this and that. And it's like, just stop. It's way more complicated than that. It's way more nuanced than that. And it's so much richer than that. And I'm not going to go into Aleister Crowley's history. You don't have to support Aleister Crowley. He said a bunch of horrible things. He wasn't he had his ignorance and his bigotry and whatever. But the deck itself came through Aleister Crowley, through energies or entities or things that were not just him, and ultimately create a tarot deck that shows you I think the highest forms of love as an expression of just pure being. And this is very sophisticated stuff because Aleister Crowley was not the first person to explore this. Every mystic, every occultist, every philosopher, at least the older ones like Hellenistic ones and Parmenides and Plotinus, and they're all looking for this ultimate truth, the mystical experience, which this deck ultimately illustrates through different levels. So when I found this Thoth deck and I started playing around with this, I thought to myself, this is what I came for. But of course it didn't end there, because just when we think we're like so excited, like we found the thing, we find something even better. So I was reading the Thoth deck for a long time, as a professional, and using it and studying it and having a lot of fun and going deeper into that. And then years later, I had my first mystical experience. Now, I am not someone who has a lot of supernatural experiences or metaphysical experiences. I've never seen an aura. I can't feel the energies of crystals. All I got is my ADHD and my neurodivergent brain. I've been in the new age world for a long time, but I'm not one that has a lot of really like outside of the norm experiences, except these two main mystical experiences. And to make a long story short, I was in my bed again, because this is where these things happen for me, and I was in my bed, and all of a sudden, I was reading a book, and all of a sudden, maybe you've had a similar experience as well, all of a sudden, my mind turned inside out. That's the best way I can describe it. And I recognized that there was nothing that wasn't my own awareness, and that there was nothing that wasn't your own awareness right now in this present moment, and that there was nothing that wasn't the awareness of this present moment of the entire universe. There was absolutely no possible other thing that could exist but that vast awareness that has no limits. And it was literally like my mind blew, like it opened, like I was blown, and there was nothing apart from anything. And then I came back into my body, and I came back into my ego self, and I said, that is what I came for. That. And then I started Tarot Mysticism Academy. And look, I lived a pretty cool life. I've done some cool stuff. I did some traveling, did some fire spinning. I had a dance company, did some music. I used to do crazy, stupid drugs when I was a kid, and nothing came close to that experience, that blown open, nothing is apart from the present moment, unity, consciousness, being. So that was pretty awesome. And I came back to this, and I came back to the tarot, and when I reread this material, the Thoth deck and other mystical texts, I all of a sudden realized that what these mystics and occultists and crazy people were talking about was not something far away. It wasn't something mystical or supernatural or secret. It was literally closer to you than anything else could be. It was literally your own consciousness, your own perfect awareness that is not separate from anything else. And when I realized that, the texts and the philosophy embedded in the Thoth Tarot and in the Qabalah and in Hermeticism and in Neoplatonism and in the Upanishads and in the list goes on, was like almost literal. Like it was literally saying like, no, literally, like this is it. You are vast consciousness. There's nothing but that. And I was like, damn, they literally been trying to tell us for thousands and thousands of years. How cool is that? So then I told the universe, this is what I came for. So it reignited my passion with tarot and all this stuff, and yeah. And the reason why I tell you this story about my stages into the Thoth Tarot is because I have found there to be 3 general levels with tarot, and I want to teach them to you to offer you context of where tarot can go. Because this is really where I want to see tarot. Like I have a school, I teach people tarot all the time, and I love it. I love teaching tarot reading. But there are layers to tarot that are, for me, so much more exciting that for me have helped me tremendously. If you saw me years ago, you wouldn't even recognize me. I was a hot mess. But through working certain techniques that I've found in my own research, lots of crazy things happened and changed. Shadow work, if you will. Yeah, so Thoth deck is great for shadow work, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I want to talk to you guys about 3 levels of tarot reading, and then I'm going to try to jump into the little rhyme that I put together to explore some stuff. You can download this. I tried to put it in the chat. If you can't download it in the chat, I also have all of my ebooks. I have a bunch of free ebooks on my website. I'm going to put that in the chat. It's www.tarotmysticismacademy.com/e-books. And there's a bunch of free stuff there you can download and play with and journal, and there's lots of good content there that will teach you a lot of stuff. Here is the first page of a super long, multi-100-page ebook on the Thoth Tarot and all of this crazy stuff. But I want to bring you to this page real quick. 3 planes of being. There's generally 3 planes, and there's more than 3. You can divide this in any way you want. I'm not saying this is the law. It's not like that. There's infinite planes. But generally, there's 3 planes I have found, doing tarot for a long ass time and teaching people that tarot tends to kind of go towards one of these 3. The first plane is the mechanical, the second is the subtle causal, and the third is the mystical. The level 1, the mechanical plane, is when we use tarot for what most muggles, most people think tarot's for. When people say, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? What do I need to know? Any question in that mode is working on the mechanical plane. Why mechanical? Because when we ask a question about what is happening, what do I need to know, we're asking what is going to knock into what? To knock into what? To knock into me. We're looking at a slightly Newtonian universe where things cause other things and matter knocks into matter. We're looking at what's going to happen to our bodies, where we're going to be, with who, and what events will take place through time. And that is totally cool, and you can rock somebody's world with that. And I love it, and I've been doing it for years. It's great. Okay, what happens when you get bored of that? Well, there's another plane. There's the subtle causal plane. When you get bored of the mechanical plane, you start asking questions like, who am I? It's less about what's going to happen to me, and it's less about what do I need to know, and it's less about where's my body going to be in space at what time with who in the future, and more about who am I right now. Because in the subtle causal plane, time starts to dissolve. And it's in the subtle causal plane that we access all of the juiciness of the archetypes and the subtle world and the energies in the body. To make it simple, it's the mind. It's all the craziness, all the horrors and glories in this thing, in that space between your ears. It's your dreams, it's your subconscious and the collective unconscious and the objective psychoid, if you will. It is at this place where the tarot becomes not so much a tool for fortune telling, not even so much a tool for insight into events, but a tool for reflection into who we are. And that's where your shadow work comes in. And the Thoth Tarot is, off the bat, it's already on that level. It doesn't even start with the mechanical level. It starts with the subtle causal level. Actually, it starts on the mystical level. So in the subtle causal level, we start asking more about who we are. What are the patterns in our psyche, in our awareness, in our being that bring about the events in our life? This is the law of attraction that everyone talks about. It's the subtle causal. Okay. Now, what happens when you get bored of that? Well, let me tell you, I have a whole nother level for you, the mystical level. The mystical level is when we stop asking, who am I? We stop identifying with every new, exciting, pretty, beautiful, spiritual thing that we find, with every energy, this, that, archetype, this, past life, this. We let it all go, and we start asking the question, what am I? And when we ask the question, what am I, things can get very frightening. Because that's when our ideas of ourselves start to dissolve. This is where the ego death takes place. And this is what tarot can symbolize to us in its mystical prowess at its highest level. So this is where we start to merge with everything and have that mystical experience. And this is the moment of recognizing, oh my God, there is nothing that's not the awareness of this moment. And everyone that's watching and being with me right now, that is it. There's nothing else. There's nothing that has not shown up in that present moment. And that is a great place to be, because that is not just healing, it is a paradigm shift that changes everything. And that is that's what I'm here for. That's what I came for. And it's so fun, because I'd be lying if I said I was there all the time, but just having that one glimpse is enough. Okay, so the Thoth Tarot deck talks about that, but not in the language that I'm using. It talks about it in a very fancy language. Why is that? Because Aleister Crowley was a smartass, and he loved to rant, and he was a brilliant genius, total genius. I don't care, you don't have to love him. The man was a genius, Lord Voldemort or not, he was a genius, and he could flip esoteric ideas like nobody's business. And that is essentially, and people may, again, it depends on how you interpret it, but that is essentially what he's talking about in this book, but veiled through layers and layers of symbols. There is something in this book that's especially esoteric. There's a level of this book that is especially ontological, existential, and it's when he talks about zero. And when he talks about the number or non-number zero, he's talking about that boundless nothingness, which is, you might say, consciousness awareness, or the nothingness through which everything came from in the universe. And that is the mystical level of tarot, and that is what I'm interested in playing with. Okay, but before I scare you away with any more of that stuff, let's talk about differences between the Thoth Tarot deck and Rider-Waite-Smith. And by the way, if you read the Book of Thoth, you're not gonna, like what I'm describing to you is a different way of accessing that knowledge. When you read the Book of Thoth, you're gonna get symbols, you're gonna get references to the Book of the Law, you're gonna get qabalah, astrology, you're gonna get all types of systems, but essentially they're all pointing, or the symbols and the systems are all act as a wardenship of that divine zero. And this is nothing new because the mystics and sages and philosophers have been at this forever. First page of A Course in Miracles, if you ever read that, what does it say? Nothing that I see means anything. Same thing, that's the zero. Okay. So what the Thoth deck does, and what I'm going to introduce to you today a little bit, is the subtle world. If I went right into the mystical, I'd scare you away. You'd think I'm crazy if you don't already. But it really starts with the subtle world. And what do I mean by that? The Thoth Tarot deck, each card is kind of like a zip file. You know how like when you have a zip file, you download a zip file, you have to double click it, and then the zip folder, the folder opens up, and then there's multiple documents within that zip file. That's kind of like what the Thoth deck is. Each card is like a zip file, and you have to open it up to see all of its ingredients to understand the card. So when we're using the Thoth Tarot in readings, each card you have to unpack to see all of the forces at play. One of the things I used to do is like I would give like 20, 30-minute readings with one card, and it would impress people a lot, because back in the day, you know, if you were using a lot of tarot cards in your reading, like you were a beginner, and if you were only using like a couple cards, you were really advanced. It's not true. It was just a trend. I don't know when I was growing up, but they pack a punch, they pack a lot of stuff. And that's because the Thoth Tarot is connected to multiple disciplines, namely the astrology and the hermetic qabalah. Those are the two big ones. And these, everyone here knows astrology. Some people probably know hermetic qabalah. Qabalah in general is a tradition of mysticism that comes from Judaism. And it is the anatomy of God. And it will rock your world. It'll melt your brain. It's great. So be careful. Hermetic Kabbalah is the later adoption and remix of Jewish Kabbalah by Christians, then Hermeticists, and other people in the Renaissance, more post-Renaissance, I guess. And it made its way into occult circles. And it bridges a lot of things together, Tantra. It's essentially Kabbalah plus Tarot and all of the Western esoteric curiosities, the things that they were getting their hands on, Tantra, Hermeticism, some Christian mysticism, different things. But yeah, it rocks your world. And the reason why this deck is working on the subtle plane is because it's so connected to these systems that are filled with abstraction. So the Thoth Tarot deck is filled with abstraction, filled with symbolism that points us to very subtle patterns of not just being human, but being, like literally being. It shows you the patterns of pure existence. That's what mysticism does. It points you to pure being. It's the highest form of meta. Meta being the ultimate being anything that's self-referential. Self-referential, I can't talk. Consciousness becoming aware of itself. So I'm gonna go through a little rhyme with you guys, and we're gonna actually take it down a notch before I scare you away. I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm gonna share with you the Thoth Tarot Instant Reading Guide, which you can download. I put it in the chat, but again, if you don't have the chat, you can get it at tarotmysticismacademy.com/e-books. Thoth Tarot Instant Reading Guide. Holy Crowley, you've arrived. To my Thoth Tarot Instant Reading Guide, your virtual astral journey was long. Now you'll never get a reading wrong. You're shuffling consciousness in your hands, watching Babylon and Shakti dance. You can't mess this up, so don't worry. Focus your mind on your query. Pull a card and be sincere. If the card's a suit, then start here. Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can fly through this bad boy. You'll know some of these ideas. Wands are fire, business, desire, and the spirit up above. Cups are water, intuition, and love, the womb of life, spirit in our blood. Okay, so in the Thoth deck, yes, we have the same elements, but they have a little bit of a different connotation. They're much more sexual. The Thoth Tarot deck is sexual AF. You'll see phallic symbols upon phallic symbols, and that is because Crowley was sexual AF. He loved to have a good time. Can we blame him? And the sex in the Thoth deck is not just referring to sex, it's also referring to certain aspects of ritualistic sex that I won't say much about, but it also refers to the sex of the universe, the pure sex of the polarity of gender. And I don't say that in like a man versus woman sense. I actually mean that in a mystical sense. The sex of the Thoth deck, if you really study these symbols and trace them and follow their history, what you eventually find is that the dance that is happening between fire and water, the wands and the cups, Shiva and Shakti, Purusha and Prakriti, above and below hermetically, right? Shiva and Kali, Shakti, all of the dance is between the experience of the subject and the object, or rather the subject and the object. The subject, which is your consciousness, and the object of your consciousness, which is me right now in this moment, or whatever else is your attention is going to. That's the dance, right? We're having this dance right now. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? That's the dance. It's the sex of the universe. Look how much fun we're having. So let's move on to air and earth. There's lots to unpack here. Swords are air, ego, and mind. The spirit's intellectual signs. Discs are earth, matter, wealth. The spirit now reflects itself. So the elements in the Thoth deck show us a creative process that starts with fire and ends with earth. And it zigzags between the extremes of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, which you can find echoed in every mystical traditions. I think it's recorded. I think it is, yes, it's recorded. So we're dancing between subject and object, consciousness and the objects of consciousness, and above and below, all of that. Y'all know what the elements are, so I'm not going to go over them. But just so you know, the elements in the Thoth deck are much more sexual. They have a farther reach. And air is the ego that exists between the elements. This is something, if you're studying Kabbalah, if you're studying hermetic Kabbalah, know that air is the central point, that is the ego, which is really the feedback loop that comes about through the constant dance between subject and object. Ego is between the two. Okay, that's air. And earth is the rendered material universe in all of its high pixelation and detail. We love it. Okay, moving on. If the suit has a number 1 of 10, you will wonder how the elements are brought to us in 10 magical emanations thus. So the 4 elements are filtered through 10 emanations. This has to do with Kabbalah. I'm not going to go into the Tree of Life. If you want to learn about the Tree of Life and Kabbalah, I have a YouTube channel with a bunch of free classes. Go to youtube.com/Joe Monteleone. I have a bunch of stuff there. But we're going to look at these numbers, and we're going to see how the numbers express the element. So the aces of the Thoth deck are the root of the suit, great potential but minute. These are only the source of the element. The 2s, the pure element itself in force, masculine energy going forth. So all the 2s of the Thoth deck have to do with the directed pure energy of the element. So they're kind of intense in a way, and they express the element's purity. 3s are the feminine idea of the element, time, form, and development. By the way, there are secrets and Easter eggs throughout this. So if you're into this kind of stuff, if you're into esotericism, if you're into Kabbalah, you'll draw all the connections. The 3s in the Thoth deck have to do with the feminine and thus have to do with form. Why? Because females historically give form to life, right? How cool is that? I mean, you know, historically, it's 2024, so it's like, what is gender anyway? But that in terms of the archetypes and the symbols. So Saturn is connected to all the 3s in the tower. They all have to do with a development, something taking shape, something taking form. The 4s are that form now manifesting, materializing in some way, establishing structure. So the 4s, the materialization, secure but safe, don't stay too long, there's more, make haste. So all the 4s in the Thoth deck, you will see, have to do with a level of comfort and security and structure with their element. So Four of Swords, for example, is the safe, structured feeling of a relatively peaceful mind. All right, fives. Fives are motion and struggle allow for change, a difficult but necessary exchange. So in the fives of the Thoth deck, we see the challenges, we see the disruptions, we see motion, we see, all that good stuff. Notice that all of this is a creative process. And the creative process that these cards are expressing is not just the creative process that is you and your life, but the whole universe. Yes, the whole universe as the anatomy of pure being, remember? Sixes, beauty and harmonization, the highest practical application. So all the sixes bring in some ways the best of the element in practical form. They're very balanced, they're very harmonious. The sevens, degeneration and weakness here, a frantic struggle, a vision unclear. So all the sevens of the tarot, of the Thoth tarot and the tarot really in general, will show some sort of struggle, some sort of effort, some sort of individualism or force trying to continue itself. The eights, thought applied to the element, submission too might be a hint. The nines, energy complete and fully spent, the element in the material sense. And the tens, overflowing in excess, too much can bring distress. So eights bring intellect to the element. Nines bring the finish line of the creative process to the element. It kind of is where the element culminates in its most manifest strength. And then tens are where things overflow. A lot of people get tripped on this. The tens are not the end. The nines are the end. 9 is the last digit. 10 is when it starts again. And it brings us all the way back to the ace. Yeah, the Thoth deck is great. It's like so much fun. It just keeps going, Every time you read this, you'll get more. You'll read this once and you'll be like, what the hell was he talking about? You'll read it again, you'll start to get it. And then every time you read it, it's just more is revealed to you. There's so much. So the court cards, see, another thing I love about the Thoth deck is the court cards. The court cards actually make sense in the Thoth deck. And the reason why they don't always make sense in the Rider-Waite-Smith and why people get confused about them is because, well, I'm not going to throw shade on him. He's a great mystic in his own right. But, the court card system in the Rider-Waite-Smith is like, okay, nuclear family. I mean, yeah, that's cool. It doesn't uphold the majesty of the Holy Tetragrammaton. What is the Holy Tetragrammaton? It's the Hebrew letters you see on the right put into a vertical form. Okay, Holy Tetragrammaton is the name of God, Yod-He-Vav-He, Yahweh, Jehovah, or properly pronounced as Vukka, what? No, just kidding. There's no way you can pronounce it. It's impronounceable. Why is it impronounceable? Because there's nothing that's not God. And to name something is to make something other than something else. Okay, so this is the name of God, and the court cards represent the 4 letters of this name of God. And in so doing, they represent everything. This name of God represents a creative process. And with these 4 Hebrew letters, we are met with 4 worlds. 4 worlds that connect to the 4 elements: fire, water, air, earth, elements of astral birth, remix, Scott Cunningham or whoever, 1990s, right? Am I right? I can't believe I just connected Scott Cunningham with qabalah. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. The cringiness of it all. So, yeah. And so the 4 offices of the court cards of the Thoth deck system is Knight, Queen, Prince, and Princess. And they make a lot more sense when you study them than the Rider-Waite-Smith does, in my humble opinion. Because they actually show the perfectly balanced dance between the subject and the object, the masculine and the feminine, the Purusha and the Prakriti, the Shiva and the Shakti, the above and the below. I can go on and on. They show the dance between opposition that makes the universe, that makes all possible experience. And here's the crazy thing. This is not out of this world. You don't have to hopscotch the tree of life or do a bunch of rituals or imagine it. It's literally right now. You looking at me is the dance that is expressed by the court cards. You being the knight, being consciousness, seeing me, the object, the queen, I'm a queen, hey. but in that dance, the knight and queen come together and they create a prince, which is your mind going right now. Your very mind having thoughts about what I'm saying, that's the prince. And the way that those thoughts are trickling into your body and your nervous system right now, shifting the way that your life is, that's the princess. It's all right now. I love demystifying this stuff because it actually makes it more powerful. So I guess in this moment, I want to do a quick pitch. If you want to really study the Thoth deck, I do have a lot of free classes on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Joe Monteleone. And I'm going to actually add some more stuff. I'm starting a podcast. And I got some other really cool things I'm going to be releasing soon, some really deep stuff. I started a podcast on this book. We'll see how far it goes. And if you really want to dive super deep in this, I also teach something called the Thoth Tarot Mastery Course. It's it's the culmination of actually a year of study. Every time I teach, the curriculum grows. My curriculum is now like a year long because it takes actually more than a year to learn all this stuff and learn how to work it and actually work it in your body, in your mind, for your own development, for your own tarot practice and beyond. And there's a lot of stuff there. So if you want to check that out, tarotmysticismacademy.com. But yeah, okay, done with the pitch. Let's keep going. Let's go into these majors. These majors are really where things get even more trippy. These majors have a lot of associations. And on the right side of this guide, you'll see these images. And you might be like, what are these random images doing there? These images are connected to the Hebrew letter associations of the cards. Each one of these cards has a Hebrew letter association. And that Hebrew letter association gives it more meaning and places it on the tree of life over here in a certain way. And these Hebrew letters help us discern the more subtle aspect of the card. And this is what I mean when I say that this deck is all about the subtle, shameless promotion. I'm a Capricorn, I can't help it. The Hebrew letters and all these ideas point to the more subtle concept of the card. Now, the subtle concept of the card is much more abstract, okay? So because of that, it's not always the most practical, but at the same time, it kind of is. So let's jump in. The Fool is Pan, everything, the Big Bang, trust, and happening. Harpocrates and Parsifal, the void, the truth, and the all. The Magus has wisdom, alacrity, craft, cunning, and deceit. The Priestess influences with pure grace, fluctuation, and a change of pace. That's all because she's connected to the Moon card. Just as an example, the Priestess is the Hebrew letter Gimel, which when spelled out means camel. And the camel is a symbol of a place on the tree of life in mystical ascent or the great work or whatever you want to call it, where you essentially have the final ego death. And you have to go through the desert, the lifeless desert, because no life exists there because it's a void. The Empress is the mother, the door of love to one another. Literally, the Hebrew letter is Dalet, which means door. The Emperor is government, also the self-uncovering. The Hierophant explains, provides spiritual teachings, this very guide. Ooh, meta, love that. The Lovers represents creation by division and relation. So the Lovers card, I'll talk about it forever, but so much stuff here. This is the creation of the universe through division. This is what divides, essentially, your experience of yourself and the object of your awareness, which is me, is part of the Lovers. But also there's a bunch of other things to it. There's a whole ritual with this card. The Chariot triumphs with hope and victory, authority under authority. Adjustments, karma always wins. Ma'at balances with a grin. This is the causality of the universe. The Hermit illuminates within, retiring from samsara's spin. Fortune favors, grasping hands, grab the boon, changes soon. That's the Wheel of Fortune. Lust is magic, strength, and action. Your true self always sanctioned. So the Lust card instead of the Strength card of the Rider-Waite-Smith, because this card is, Crowley says that lust is the joy of strength exercise. This is an illustration of the goddess Babylon, which is kind of a Crowley original in his mythology or in his religion, in his work. And she's really fun. She's essentially like when you're in your passion and you kind of let go of yourself and you're in the flow state. The hanged man chose to sacrifice to see the world through spiritual eyes. Death is only an illusion, a dance, and we are all included. Art combines unlikely things, alchemical entangling. The devil has an ambitious claim, blind impulse, the material game. That's me, the Capricorn. The tower causes sudden loss. Off our fortress we are tossed. The stars hope a clear vision. Infinite space has a secret mission. This card is an illustration of Nuit, or Nuit, which is one of the goddesses, the goddess of Aleister Crowley's religion. And he kind of has a religion too, by the way. It's called Thelema, which is Greek for will. And it's very interesting stuff. It's very deep stuff. You can find more information about that elsewhere. The moon deceives the hysteria with hysteria. The dark night of the soul is in everyone. The sun is glory, gain, and riches. Heru Raha's powerful conditions. So the sun card shows Heru Raha, which is the sun god in Crowley's system, which is this twin deity, which is actually a very vengeful and war deity, but it's more complicated than that. The Aeon is your final choice. Ascend to Horus and rejoice. So this card, the Aeon, is an illustration. I'll throw the link in the chat real quick. The Aeon is an illustration of the stele of revealing, which is a Egyptian stele that Crowley found that kind of helped him develop and or channel his religion and these deities. It shows three deities, Nuit, Hadit, Nuit, and Rahor-Kuit, and they are, or Hadit, Nuit, Rahor-Kuit, and they are these deities that Crowley channeled in the Book of the Law, and they're pretty wild. They're a fun time. And this last card, one of my favorite ones, the universe, the grand finale, fulfilled, endorsed, the final tally. If you can climb a sacred snake, a brand new universe you will make. So there's one important symbol on this card that I want you guys to walk away with and never forget because it's so cool. Notice she's stepping on the head of the snake. This is a Kabbalistic symbol. And one interpretation of this is that we are this princess right here, and we are waking up, and in so doing, we are stepping on the snake. Now, what does the snake symbolize? It symbolizes, amongst many things, our very DNA. It symbolizes the very dance between life and death. It symbolizes the very samsara we are trying to escape. It symbolizes the very ignorance and gnosis of the Greeks. It symbolizes the ignorance and knowledge of Brahman, that dance between ignorance and coming into knowledge of Brahman in the Vedanta. It symbolizes the very lifting up from the world of illusion, the matrix, Maya, whatever you want to call it, into that mystical experience that I told you guys about earlier, that moment where you realize, oh my God, there is nothing but this. Cool. Thank you guys so much for coming here with me. If you're interested in tarot mysticism craziness, again, you'll find more classes. I have a bunch of free stuff, again, on my YouTube, tarotmysticismacademy.com. Download the ebooks, tarotmysticismacademy.com/e-books. Do you have any questions for me real quick before I close because we're out of time? Thank you all so much. So much love to you. Please, hit me up. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your questions. I'm happy to geek out with this about you at any time. So much love. So happy to be here. Thank you, Christiana, for having me. This is so much fun. Love you all. Talk soon. Bye-bye. See you in the next wormhole.